Hi, how are you doing?
I'm good. How about you?
Good. Great to see you.
Thank you. Same here. It's
Missed you
been
at
too long.
SSCA. I wasn't able to make it,
Yeah.
so this gives us a chance to catch up a little bit. We've known each other a long time,
Yes, we have.
and this gives us a chance to talk about a few things we haven't talked about before.
True.
I sent you the information about our target for this and how we're going to use these interviews. So I appreciate you taking some time to let me interview you this morning.
Okay. Sounds
And
good.
this is nice as we as we both go off into some form of retirement.
Yeah. I flunked retirement. That's
Well,
what they keep telling me.
yeah, I'm doing the same thing in a little bit different form. So I've sent you the questions that we'll go from, and we'll
Yeah,
work.
I'm looking for them.
We'll start with that, and we'll see where it leads us. So first, what drew you to want to study and get a PhD in communication?
Well, when I was an undergrad, I went to uh, I went to University of South Florida. I went to community college for a year. And then when I went to University of South Florida, they said, um, what do you want to major in? I said, oh, I want to be an English teacher. Well, at that point in time, English teachers were a dime a dozen. So they said, so put something with it because you'll make yourself more saleable in the workplace. And I said, they said, gave me the choice of speech, theater, or library science. And I said, oh, I took public speaking at Miami-Dade. I think I like that. So I'll put that there. So I ended up being a triple undergraduate major with speech. In those days, of course, it was just speech. And then they added communication, and now it's just communication. And so, and then secondary ed and English ed. And that's what happened. I got hired as an English teacher in rural Central Florida, and and I found that I enjoyed the speech part of it better. And I started taking a graduate class. I took one graduate class when I was teaching, and then I went for the master's and was allowed to teach in the college classroom, and said, oh, I'm not going to teach high school for the rest of my life. So, I mean, I knew you in those days. So you've been there, done that.
Yeah, I think we followed a similar path.
I know. And so then I went back and taught high school for a year, and did and then went back and for the PhD. So because I knew I'd never have job security if I didn't go for the PhD. So that's what made me do that. So
Right.
I knew even in those days, back in the 80s, you know,
You could
you knew
tell.
you would never get tenure without a PhD. So.
Right. Right. In that time, how do you think the field of communication has changed since you started?
Well, I think, Terry, that it's changed immensely. Especially, my department now or my department I retired from has 5 different majors that are all considered communication. And when I was an undergrad, we just had basically what's called communication studies now. And then there was a mass communication department, but today everything includes an aspect of mass communication. So we've become much more technology bound, and especially in the last couple of years with the pandemic and everything having to be remote and online and Zoom and those kinds of things. It's really moved a lot towards that. And in fact, in the nonverbal textbook, which you'll ask me about later, but I addressed that quite a bit, because the whole idea of us communicating immediately and technologically and all those sorts of things have basically changed the field. We used to worry about things like how good is somebody's public speech, and that's not what we look at anymore.
Right.
I always say that if you're going to take a communication class and you're only going to take one, take interpersonal communication. You're going to use those skills more than you will public speaking. I think everybody should take public speaking too, but
Right. Yeah.
So
Yep. Same here.
it changed a lot.
Yep. Excuse me. Would you briefly talk a little bit about your research and interests around that?
Well, my research has been more experiential, doing things like, it's funny because I look more at experiential things, but I do more, about how people experience life and how you take the communication skills and how you experience using those communication skills. So I don't, I'm not big on doing research studies that are quantitative, statistical, but I go to those types of studies to find out what people are thinking. And so I'm kind of a cross with what in the field we would say is a cross between, and I said I wouldn't use any fancy words, but between quantitative and qualitative. So I'm kind of in between the two, which isn't that uncommon for someone who looks more at the experience of communication and how people experience it, the more experiential approach to it. When somebody asks me, I say I'm a generalist. My undergrad, which I just talked about, what it is. And then my master's degree is more about rhetoric and public address, so the public speaking end of things. And then my PhD is more about interpersonal, organizational, and education, because my PhD is in education actually, but it's communication education. So.
Okay.
It's kind of I'm kind of a crossover in my research interests.
Okay. So. What was something that you're especially proud of in your career?
Oh, I think the thing I'm most proud about is that I was a good teacher. And I think I still am. I'm a little bit picky because I'm old. So there are certain things I was like, I see an old lady, she don't want, I don't want them on their phones and getting up and walking out of the middle class because that's rude to other people. So, in fact, when I teach class, I say, I'm an old lady. If I can wait an hour and 15 minutes to go to the restroom, so can you. So, but I still think I still get good teaching evaluations, and I'm in both modes. I teach in our online program, as well as I taught face to face this past semester at Georgia Southern, which was a whole new thing for me. Their Savannah campus, and so I think that's probably my most important thing. I think the other thing is, having served as president of Southern States Communication Association, along with you and others from SAM. And so I think that's, and then some of the administrative things that I've done, I'm proud of the work that I did there. I never wanted to be in the top rung. So I was very happy doing things like being associate dean and being assistant chair, because I never wanted to be chair. I never wanted to be dean. So
that was smart.
So I think I have a lot to be proud of.
Yeah, absolutely. What scholarship in the communication field has influenced you the most, and why?
I think it's probably a cross between intercultural communication and nonverbal communication. And nonverbal communication, obviously, because I have done 4 editions of the seven editions of the nonverbal textbook.
Right.
But I became interested in intercultural when I first started at Appalachian. So that would have been, I think I started there in 87, but I think it was around 1990 when I wrote up a description of an intercultural communication class. I had a class in it at University of Maryland and loved it. And so that was sort of my baby. And then when I started doing the study abroad, taking the students overseas, I think that probably it's made me see lots of different things, but about interpersonal communication and intercultural communication and nonverbal communication, and how they all mesh together and how important they are.
Right.
So that was probably, I think that's probably the biggest interest that I have. And I just had a chapter come out in, I supposedly retired, I know, but I had a chapter come out in this, one of the books that I've forgotten, the Kendall Hunt does, that, is a conglomeration. I did a chapter on teaching nonverbal communication through leading study abroad. So, and it's about, the whole book is about, different chapters about nonverbal communication. So casing, one of those casing books that has a whole bunch of different case studies in it. And my case study was study abroad to Poland, of course.
Absolutely. Do you have a favorite or most memorable moment in the classroom?
I don't know of one in particular moment, but the best moments are when there are aha moments by the students, when they say, I get it, or their faces show, oh, I get this. And I think that any good teacher and any teacher that pays attention to the students, and having a nonverbal background, I paid probably too much attention to the nonverbals that go on in the classroom. I think that that's the most important. And because if I see those aha moments, then I know that I'm doing my job right. So, and I can't think of an actual,
well, we've been in the classroom a long time.
I'm sorry.
We've been in the classroom a long time to pick a moment. So it's
so one moment.
Yeah. Do you have a favorite topic to discuss?
Yes. And it ties to what I've already mentioned. I love to use even in rhetorical criticism this last semester, I would use examples of how things are done differently in different cultures. And so I would use examples because my background, of course, is taking students to Poland and to Prague. And then I taught intercultural this semester also. I'm teaching it in the fall. And so I've never taught it. I taught it as a one-night class the past semester. And it's like, because you have a lot of time to do a lot of different things. And I want to use a lot of what I used this semester. And I was like, oh, well, I only have an hour and 15, so I can't show that movie.
Yeah.
It also has led to some mistakes, but I think that probably most thing I pay attention to or bring up are nonverbal issues, and I use that quite a bit. It doesn't matter, what I'm teaching, and then and the travel, the study abroad. So, and Poland in particular. But
yeah. How many years have you been going to Poland?
We've been going for 25 years. The first time we went was 1997.
Wow.
The first student group we took was 1999. And then with this year would have been the 13th trip of students that we had taken. But we've been canceled 3 times. So
Yeah.
we canceled 2 times for COVID. And then this year we canceled it because of what's going on in Ukraine. But
Right.
we didn't cancel because we were, everybody goes, oh, do you think, that Putin was going to attack Poland? Is like, no, we did not. We did it to be more considerate of the Polish people, because the Polish people are bringing in so many refugees.
Yeah.
3.5 million refugees in a country that's only has 38 million people.
Yeah.
All right. And then I take 16 American students into that mix, and they're already strained with their infrastructure. We made the decision based on it was the best choice for us, but it was also the best choice for them.
Right.
It would have been very hard to do things like even ride the trains. So
they're just so overtaxed right now, and so many.
Well, they are, and the Ukrainians can get on the trains and ride for free. But I would have to have tickets and seat reservations for all my students. And so in order for us to get we would go from Krakow to Gdansk. In order to do that, I could get on the train and not have seats, even though I have tickets and reservations.
Right.
And when you're traveling with 15 students, 16 students, it's like, And then finding hotels. I had hotel reservations, so I think I would have been okay, but it's crazy.
Yeah, I can see that. That makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. What career paths have you seen your communication studies students, both undergraduate and graduate, pursue since their graduations?
Well, a lot of different ones. A lot of them will go to law school. We have a large group because we're in the Bible Belt that go to seminary and become clergy. A lot of them want to do work in politics. A lot of them like the field of hospitality management. We have one young woman right now who is it isn't media management, but it really kind of is, for the Minnesota Vikings. And then we have another one who's doing the same job for the Green Bay Packers. So it's really kind of funny because they were friends in school. They were both on the soccer team. And here they are working for 2 different,
rival football.
We have a lot of students that will minor because at App they have to minor. They have to have a minor, and a lot of them will minor in recreation management or hospitality and tourism. And so they go that route a lot. We have another one who was not a mass comm area major, because 4 of our areas are mass comm areas, and then just one is the comm studies. But she works for CNN and in Atlanta. And so, and we have other students that are not comm studies, but are either electronic media broadcasting or journalism, or those types of majors in our department, who have really good jobs with, pretty high up in some of the local in North Carolina media. The media companies. I'm thinking of this one young man he's I think maybe 2 years after graduation, maybe 3 years, but he's already anchoring. We have another one in Asheville that is already an anchor and only 2 years out of school. So they get good jobs. Those 2 were electronic media broadcasting majors, though. And, like I said, we have 5 majors.
Yeah. But a lot of your minors that are majors in one of the media majors in the department go on to do things in the media. Cool.
Yeah. Well, you asked earlier about the way of the field of communication, the way it's going. It's like, that's, that's the way it's going. It's going media marketing. It's going social media marketing. It's going, that's how. And so, a lot of students, that's the kind of jobs that they're getting.
Yeah. All right. You've published the textbook that we use in our nonverbal class, undergraduate. At least at this point, we only have an undergraduate nonverbal class. If you would briefly tell our students about the book and why you chose to publish that book, how you got involved with that.
Okay. The book is, I'll tell you the history of it first and then talk about what I've turned it into. The history was that it had been written by two of our colleagues in the field, Mark Hickson and Don Stacks, and they had written the first 3 editions of it. And they were proposing it to a publishing company, and the publishing company sent it out. And I was like, I gave it a scathing review. It just wasn't written. It was written so it wasn't understandable. It was, you talk about about using inaccessible terms.
I remember
it
that
just, and I don't know if you remember it when it was.
I do.
Okay. So when I did that, the publisher asked Mark and Don if they would take on a 3rd author and would I rewrite it so it was more accessible. So I had to write a chapter, and what I did was I took over it and wrote it in a more conversational tone. So it's written in first person. It's written like it's carrying on a conversation with the reader. And it's funny, the first time I did it, and the editor, the final editors kept trying to change it to 3rd person. It's like, no, it's written in first person on purpose, so that it can read like it's talking to the students. And I tried to use a whole lot more examples that were more accessible to students understanding what was going on, because that was part of what the issue was with the other one, with the first one. So I wrote the chapters, and Mark and Don liked it, and the rest is history. So I rewrote that. We kept their names on the book. They did not do, the first one, which was the 4th edition, they would send me some things. But from that point on, after the 4th edition, the 5th and the 6th was really completely me. Once in a blue moon, one of them would send me an article that they had read. Usually they were pop articles, which I'm pretty much that I don't use pop articles for it. I use, hard research for it. And so then they kept saying, take our names off of it. And I said, no, I wouldn't have the book if it wasn't for you two, because you two were the ones. And then finally with this one, I did, both of them are, I think Mark might have just retired, or might be thinking about it. He also worked late like us. And and so I did drop their names and it became me. Oxford University Press, it doesn't sell a lot because not everybody teaches nonverbal communication. And since Oxford University Press is a nonprofit, they weren't getting enough sales out of it. So they did not want to publish it anymore. So that's why when we went with this one, Cognella was interested in it. And I think it came out good. One of the things about Cognella is that if you discover something, you can change it, because they don't do like a billion books and have them in a warehouse. They put the books together when they have the orders, so you can change things if you need to. Try to keep up with research, of course, but also the examples. So there's quite a bit in this most recent edition about communicating via electronic term, especially, when the due date for it was February 15th, I think it was, or 21st, something like that, 2020. So what happens on March 13th, 2020?
Yeah.
The world shuts down.
Yeah.
So if I get asked to do an 8th edition, a lot of the things in there would change. I mean, you could take what's in there now and say, oh, okay, well, this is a little different now because of what we've been through.
Yeah.
So, I try to use I know I'm an old lady, but I talk to my students. I was having this discussion with my students here, and I said, I don't make any bones about it to them that I'm 70 years old, and they would say, "You are?" It's like, well, yeah. And then they said, and we were talking, and I said, the whole reason I want to keep teaching is I don't want my brain to go to mush.
Yeah.
Right? I want to be connected. So, and the way you do that with teaching is you listen to what they have to say. And you come into the classroom early and you listen to what they're talking about, and you listen to what they're following, and of course that comes through on assignments that you do. In nonverbal, that's easy for me because what I do is I ask them to do actual experience, their experiential activities in the textbook that say, okay, go out and do this, and then come back and report that. And so I use some of that for their assignments when I teach nonverbal. And so.
What was your favorite part of writing the book? And what do you hope students get out of the book?
Well, I think that my favorite part of the book is covering things that people don't normally think of as being nonverbal communication. And I thank Mark Hickson and Don Stacks for pointing that out, because their original edition had that. This is what they referred to as the covert subcodes, covert channels, things like scent and time, because people don't think about those being nonverbal communication.
Yeah.
And so I think that's the thing that I enjoyed most, because it applies in everything. It applies in the touch chapter. It applies in the space chapter. You talk about scent. Right? If somebody's too close and they stink, right, you got a message going on there.
Yeah.
There was a second half to that question.
Oh. What do you hope students would get out of the book?
Oh, thanks. Well, I hope that we would get a lot more people who are more attuned to what their communication does when they're actually communicating. How does this affect the people they're communicating with? And here's another thing that I wish would happen is we used to require this of our advertising majors, so that if you have creative advertising majors, if they would think in terms of what the nonverbal communication in an advertisement communicates, right? You'd have advertisements that might sell more product. But we don't even require it at Appalachian anymore for our advertising majors. It's only on the comm studies program of studies.
That's unfortunate. It makes perfect sense that advertise.
Well, I complained about it big time, but I was one voice.
Yeah.
And the chair didn't agree, and so okay, it's all right.
Yeah.
We are able to fill at least two sections of it every semester, and so.
Yeah, I don't know that we offer it every semester here, but when we do offer it, it's usually two sections. It's two sections once a year, I think.
Yeah. But then that's still good. That's more, some schools don't even offer it. And that was the whole issue with Oxford.
Yeah.
They'd go to NCA and nobody would be interested.
Nobody'd pick it up.
Because they don't offer.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, that's sad because it's such a big part of communication. That's,
well, I agree.
yeah.
There are some really neat things that I like about this new textbook. I'm in Savannah right now, but I'm moving back to Boone, and the book is up in Boone. But there are, the color pictures. They make a huge difference
Mhm.
because you can look at black and white pictures, and this is the first edition that has had color pictures. And it tells you a whole lot more. That's another part of the covert subcodes. For example, I'm looking at the pictures on the wall behind you and the one over your left shoulder. The colors are vibrant. And when
Pops.
people wear vibrant colors, I've got green on today, or teal.
Yeah.
And of course, and here's another thing that I really like about this, I'm kind of proud of, is the aspects of the differences between male and female communication, which, as you know, is sex, and gender. So the masculine versus feminine, which, and of course, that's more of a continuum, as you know, and yes, I know that's just basic definition. And, my students are quick to tell me, well, there's this, it's like, I know, we're just talking basic definition here.
Yeah.
But I deal quite a bit with those aspects. And I think having taught gender communication before, it helps in the nonverbal area when I address those things. So.
Yep. If you had any advice to give to the next generation of communication scholars, what would it be?
Choose something you like. I was thinking about this, just a little bit ago, and it's like, if you take a class, take some general classes, right? Things where you get introduced to topics and hone in on something that you really like. That's how most of us have done it. I mean, that's what your research, you honed in on something that you liked, right? And if you do that, then the job is fun.
Yeah.
Your research is fun. Even just doing papers for a class, if you'll find something that catches your attention and your ability to pick it apart and look at it, right? You're going to have a much better academic career. If you decide to go further in communication, go to grad school or any of those sorts of things, it'll be a much easier, when I went for my master's, I had a real interest I had read Harry Truman's Plain Speaking book. And I thought, oh my gosh, this guy's great. And my master's thesis ended up being about Harry Truman and civil rights, all right? Because it was a thing that I was like, oh, look, this guy was a civil rights advocate long before the 60s. So, and in the 50s, he's out there fighting for civil rights before we even get to the civil rights movement. Yeah. So, but that caught my interest in my PhD program. And sometimes you can find this from your professors, if you want to do research in Zydeco music, you go make friends with Dr. Thibodeau, because he's going to be the one who can mentor you in that direction. And that's what happened to me in grad school for my PhD. Is my advisor and mentor was interested in teacher clarity, about teaching teachers to be more clear in the classroom. And so I got an interest in that. And my dissertation is a study that looks at that. So, that would be my biggest thing. Find something that interests you. And if you don't, then this might not be the program for you. But I can't imagine that there isn't some aspect of communication that doesn't interest someone.
Yeah. And that's one of the cool things about nonverbal too. Almost always with nonverbal, students can find something that piques their interest. Mm-hmm. There's usually some aspect of nonverbal that'll really grab them, in teaching it. I've always felt that.
Yes, I agree.
And
I
so
agree.
that's one of the reasons I like teaching it.
Yeah, I love teaching it. And
Yeah.
and in fact, because I'm teaching one seated class in the fall, teaching one online and one seated, I had hoped it would be nonverbal, but it isn't. But that's okay. I'm teaching intercultural, which I like just as
Yeah.
well.
Where do you see the communication field going in the future?
Technology.
Yeah, that's one of the things you talked
It's,
about earlier.
you know, I would hope, here's my fear, that it will pay so much attention to the technological aspects of communication that we will forget our roots in human communication skills.
Yeah.
And yes, I know there are human communication skills in this type of format or in any technological format. But I think that the more we rely solely on looking only at technological things, you know, most of our new classes that get on our books, I don't know about it for you all, have an aspect of technology to it, you know, social media strategies, you know, all sorts of things like that. And so what we lose track of are things like the interpersonal communication classes or small group communication. You know, when I teach the senior seminar, our capstone class, I tell them that employers are looking for people who can work in teams. So, but we don't teach any class that teaches that. You know, we used to teach small group communication. It is no longer on our textbook. Yeah, I mean on our course list.
Yeah.
It's like, and that's the skill that most employers want, are people that can do that. So I'm hopeful, Terry, that we don't lose complete sight of the human aspects of communication and go solely the route of technology. So
Yeah, I agree strongly. Is there a question that you wished we would have asked during the interview?
no, I don't think so.
We didn't
I
miss
think you've
anything?
asked a lot.
I really appreciate it. This was so much fun. It was good catching up with you and seeing you again. And
Same here.
can't wait till Southern next year. I may be going to New Orleans. Isn't NCA in New Orleans in November? Is it this year?
NCA is in New Orleans, yeah.
So that
And
might
if
be
you do, bring your lovely wife and we'll
I
all
hope
go
so.
eat at that place that you took.
I forgot where that was. Where was it?
Well, it
Was
was
that
down the
was it
street.
it was the Cajun music?
Yeah, it was
Is it-
Cajun.
Oh yeah, it was okay. Yeah, I remember. I can't remember the name of it, but yeah, we'll have to
Yeah,
do that. Yeah, that would be
yeah,
fun. Well, we might have quite a contingent from Sam Houston since it's not that
good,
far away. So hope to
good,
see you
good,
there.
good.
This was fun. Again, thank you very much,
Yeah,
and
thank you.
appreciate it. And be
I
careful
think this
going
is a
back to
wonderful
Boone.
idea and that your students will get a lot out of realizing that what's out there, even though they're reading a book and sitting in your class, there are other people out there that are human that have written those books and that do research and that teach things just like you all do. So
Yeah, and are accessible to for
yeah.
questions
Yeah,
and
and
we're-
if anyone has any questions, they're welcome to contact me. They have my information at Sam Houston because I'm friends with a lot of them. They
That's
know how
right.
to reach me.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Moore. We really appreciate it. And you take care. Be careful going back to Boone.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.